Welcome again to the S.E.M podcast. Jack and Zach are here again, and tonight we're joined by our friend Chase Crockett. Chase, it's so good to have you. What part of the world are you calling from tonight?
I am from Stansbury Park, Utah, about 40 miles west of Salt Lake.
Very nice.
It's close enough to be if I want to go, but far enough away that I don't want to be associated with them.
I love it. That's good. Well, Chase, we talked before. He's listened to some of his past companions on the podcast, and we're excited to hear his iteration of his experience in Scotland. Start us off, though, Chase, your experience of receiving your call and your reaction of going to Scotland.
Leading up to my call was kind of a bumpy road. So I moved out. My senior year of high school.
Okay.
Just some tumultuous problems, and at that time I was like dead set on not going. I was like, I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. I don't want anything to do with it. But I had a bishop that was just an absolute rock star. That guy, just him and I connected. He could teach you anything you wanted. He just could relate anything. It was awesome. I still talk to him today, and he just was like, "Hey, you know what? This might be the better option. You might want to do this." And I had a full time job all through high school. I've had a full time job since almost pretty much I was 14. So
Okay. Wow.
I learned how to bake when I was a kid, and when I decided to move in with my dad, I got a job at a local restaurant baking for him every Saturday morning.
Cool.
So I made all of their. They had 3 restaurants, and I made all of their like brunch breads and all their stuff for the weekends and desserts. And so
Cool.
as soon as I turned 16, it was like doors open. It's go time. You're going to be a full time. I go to school. When I didn't have any sports, I was cooking. They taught me how to like cook on a line, baking, all stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I did all that through high school, and good job. At high school, I look back now and I'm like, man, that was pretty solid.
Yeah, I bet.
At the time, I was like, man, I have no money. I can't go snowboarding. I can't do this and that. But I look back, spent so much money on going out to eat, as a high school does, right?
Yeah.
So I had this cooking job and I was full swing, and my bishop was like, hey, let's see, if we can get some money squared away, we can get this money like mission paid for, and we'll see if we can get you to go. And so
Wow.
I hadn't talked to my parents really about any of that at the moment. And I was like, I guess sure, we'll do it. And so I filled out my papers. I did all the back, like I was putting money in, um, all sorts of stuff, and they didn't know. And then I talked to my dad like a week before I got my mission call, and I was like, hey, in a week, this is going down. And he
A
goes,
week before.
yeah, a week before. So yeah. So I mean, I hadn't talked to him at that point. I hadn't really talked to him in, I don't know, a few months. And so he tells me that, and he's like, that because he thought I was just going to go off the rails and just go into the deep end. As
Interesting.
most religious parents do. Their teenagers or think just shenanigans.
Right.
So my mission call came, and we're open at the house, and I was hoping and praying that I wasn't going stateside. That was just hoping and praying. I was like, I hope I go somewhere to learn a language. I want to learn a language. I want that skill to last me afterwards. And I read Scotland, and I was like, dope. This is perfect. Immediately started YouTubing stuff, and I think I pulled up a video from an old tattoo, and I looked at them. I was like, I have no clue what they just said.
Yeah.
And because it was really cool. My older brother served a mission, and he was there when Columbine happened. He was in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
He was
Wow.
actually in the neighborhood, I guess, like in the neighboring area when that whole thing went down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told him, and he was like, good for you. You're going to do it. 100% commit. Even if you don't like it, do it.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, okay. Even if whatever happens, I don't like it, I'm going to finish this regardless, because it's going to be awesome. I'm going to a different country. So it's going to be cool. And so, it's open that, and it just clicked. Everything. I started watching, more and more videos, started doing more research, started looking at everything, trying to get accustomed to what was about to come my way. Just the whirlwind of everything. Um, yeah, and so then I left January 1st. I was in the airport January 1st of 2009. So I got
2009.
yeah, so I got set
Nice.
apart like December 30th on 2008.
Nice.
And the
Does that mean
bishop,
you only had one Christmas you were on your mission?
yeah, because since they send you home 2 weeks early, I got to come home December 17th of 2000, 2010. So
Nice.
it
Wow.
was, yeah, it worked
See,
out. And
see,
the
I was pretty
bishop,
close to the same as you, Chase. I left the 5th of January,
oh, there you go.
and my parents were like, "Come home for Christmas," and I said, "No, thanks.
Yeah.
Safe Christmas for me."
hmm
But that's cool. Good for you.
Yeah, it was good. They did it a couple days earlier because the bishop and the stake president had plans for New Year's Eve. I was like, "Oh, you guys are doing me dirty." And my dad just looks at me and he's like, "You're not going anywhere. You're going to be glued right to my side." And I was like, "Oh no." I was like,
Well, hope
I can't even go outside and like watch fireworks and this and that." And he's like, "Not if I don't."
jeez. Hopefully, you put on a football game of some sort, and you could enjoy that.
Yeah, it was good. At the time, I just thought, the world was ending because whatever. But it was good. It ended up working out.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
So you get home December of 2010.
Mhm.
Tell us what life's been like in the last 14, 15 years.
Oh, it's been crazy. I came home and so I've known my wife since 8th grade. And before I left, I told her, I was like, "Don't wait for me. Do whatever you're gonna do. I'm not gonna be. I don't want to be responsible for like holding you back. I don't want to be that person to because things change." And this is a story that I have later with Sean Waite, who was my companion,
Yeah.
that I heard about getting him. So this is funny because I have the journal in front of me that I have the entry from the day I got. Anyway, um, it's just been crazy. I started cooking. I got married 6 months after I came home. So she waited. She went to cosmetology school, got her license, had a full-time job, bought a car, pretty much paid it off, was somewhat locked and loaded when I came home.
Yeah.
And I came home straight into cooking. I had like a week before I came home, I had emailed the owner of the restaurant group before I left. I said, "Hey, I'm coming back off my mission. Can I come do this?" And he goes, "Oh, absolutely. Done deal."
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so
You must have been an impressionable cook.
I don't know, or they just needed the help.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I got released, and like 3 days later, I was cooking. I had my working everything.
Yeah.
And I remember the day I came home, the next day we went to Costco, and I went to get a cell phone, and I'm talking to the person, and they had to stop me, and they're like, "You need to slow down, and I can't understand you."
Yes. Yes.
And in my brain, I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like I'm speaking just fine, and they're like, "No, no, no. Where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Cobbett Heights."
Yeah.
Like I went to Cobbett High School. Like this is, I'm like right up the road. And they're like, "No, no, no. Like legitimately, where are you from? Like what country are you from?" And then, and then it clicked because I had never thought, being so immersed in the culture of Scotland and being everything there, and I had never, in my brain, had never clicked that. I was like, I probably have something. I sound different.
Oh yeah.
And so,
I had friends that
That's cool.
came to my door and just wanted to listen to me talk when I came home because I had the same problem. I'm from
yeah,
Sandy, down the road from you, and it was the exact same thing.
hmm
It's pretty funny.
yeah. And so since then, I went to school, as everybody does. I'm going to go to school, get some classes in. Couldn't pay attention to save my life, but I was cooking all the time. I was getting better, working my way up. Took on more responsibility, started running the restaurant, started help this restaurant owner open a new restaurant. I was part of the opening management staff, and I moved that group, and then went down. There's a French bakery downtown called Gourmandy's.
Hmm.
Probably heard of them if you've been downtown Salt Lake. It's kind of like, anyways. I helped them. They get the licenses for some stuff and help them build a whole new menu. And while that was going on, I have family in Vegas that worked at, for MGM, and they said, man, they are hiring cooks left, right, and center, and they are starting out at crazy good money.
Hmm.
So at that time, we had just had our first boy, and I was like, why not? Why not go for it? So I put in for a Spanish restaurant in the Aria, and Spanish, like Spain Spanish, not like Mexico Spanish, but like
Yeah.
real Spanish cuisine. Knew nothing about it. Absolutely. I'd done Italian for the whole time. And in the cooking world, you do like a tryout. When you get to that level, it's called a stage, and you pretty much, you go and you work for free for like 4 or 5 hours. And they pretty much just beat you down for that 4 or 5 hours just to see if you can handle their pace. And 9 times out of 10, it's amplified because they want to see if you're going to be like, cool, I'm good, or if they can, you can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I show up, and I'm all dressed up, and he told me not to bring my coat, told me not to bring anything, and I walk in there, and I have like this really nice flannel, and I meet this guy, and he's like, "Oh, you're gonna cook me paellas all night." Had no clue what a paella was. This little Filipino guy showed me how to do one, and I looked over, and I had like 30 tickets, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I instantly, there's a term in the cooking world called "in the weeds," and it's just, you're instantly backed up, just done. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And I'm sitting there, and I'm cooking everything. I ended up getting the job, and so we ended up moving to Vegas and lived in Vegas. So that was at the Aria Hotel, which,
Nice.
if anything about Vegas, it's one of the nicer hotels on the ends of the Strip. And then while I was doing that, I got a job for Wolfgang Puck and helped him open a restaurant in Summerlin.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, I was working for 2 celebrity chefs at the same time. So I had Wolfgang Puck in the mornings, and I was there, it's like 5:30 to 5:30 in the morning. I worked until about 2, and I had an hour to get to the Strip and start my shift at 4. And I'd go 4 to midnight.
Golly.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
the hotel was cool. I mean, that was an experience. Nothing can replace that. Just seeing that whole dynamic of everything, and it's a union down there. Most of the kitchens down there are union. And so, like, I worked my way up, and then I became like one of the executive sous chefs there, and so once you do that, you get out of the union, and so you get to see the whole different dynamic of like how MGM actually runs the hotels, going in and out of meetings, and like you're dealing with like the hotel director and like actual like executive staff and like private events, and that was really cool. And then we had our second son while we were in Vegas, and it was just meanwhile, this whole time, like, my wife was trying to find a job, and this and that, and childcare was so expensive.
Yeah.
Like, even if she had a really good job, 90% of her check was just going to go into daycare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. This is redundant. Like,
Hmm.
So we ended up making the decision to come back to Utah because my family's kind of all spread out, but her entire family's here. So that network for her, and if I'm at work, was crucial. So we moved back up here, and I cooked for a couple more people, helped open a restaurant in Park City, and right on Main Street, and that kind of worked out. And we built this house in 2016. And right after we moved in, at the time, I had taken a break from cooking because there's a nasty culture in cooking, especially in smaller cities, or smaller groups, where they'll hire a bunch of people in and they'll fix all their problems. And once all the problems are fixed, they'll just let you go. And thanks for making my restaurant better. And then they'll kick you to the door. I had gone through a couple of restaurants where we came in and fixed their food costs and the labor costs and redid their menus and shenanigans. We did all the stuff that they didn't want to do. And so I took a break from cooking, and I got a job doing at a motorcycle. Like, I grew up riding motorcycles, and so got a job at a place like where we built and manufactured motorcycle like chains and sprockets and handlebars and stuff like that for race bikes, race teams. That was my job. Is I talked to race teams all over the country and European teams, and try to get their orders back and forth. And then we were there. I don't know. I was there like 6 months, and we found out we were having twins.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I already had 2 boys at the time, and I go, once we found out twins, I'm like, I need to make some more cash, like stat. Well, a friend of mine goes, hey, come to Rock Springs, Wyoming. I'll get you a job in the oil field.
Wow.
You work a worse schedule, but you'll make more money. I
Yep.
was like, I talked it over with the wife, and she's like, I mean, whatever we got to do. And I was like, all right, done deal. Joined the oil field, like pretty much right at the beginning of 2017, and that's all I've done since.
Man, good for you.
Yeah.
What a journey.
So do you commute to the oil field for a few weeks on and then come home for a few weeks off type of
So
thing?
I do a 15 and 6. So I'm currently in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I've spent better part of 7 years in the Rockies, anywhere from North Dakota to New Mexico. I've worked in any state. And then this company that I got on with, I'm like, it's a brand new company. Like I'm employee number 16. And so we're in Oklahoma right now, and we're actually about ready to start a second fleet and move to Colorado.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So they're looking.
Come hang out with us.
Yeah, they're looking up right there. Weld County.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I live.
Yeah. I'll be pounding some sand in the ground right in your back door, pissing off all your neighbors.
Yeah, call me, Chase, and I'll help you find a house out here.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what he's like. Hey, when you go start this fleet, are you going to move to Colorado? And I was like, well, you got to make it worth my while. He's like, I'm sure we can work something out. And I'm like, okay, well, done deal.
We'll get you a house in Jack's neighborhood.
There you go.
There you go. Perfect. So yeah, that's it. Bunch of cookies
awesome.
out later, 4 kids, bunch of dogs.
So the twins are what genders?
2 females.
So you have 2 boys, 2 girls.
Yep.
Nice. And what are their ages now?
11, 9, and 7.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's we had them real. At the time we were like, man, when the twins were born, the oldest, he wasn't quite 4 yet. So at the one time we had 4 under 4.
Oh my gosh.
And so we had a minivan, like most people here in Utah do. And you'd go to Costco and they would stare at us like we had like a disease, because we'd have 3 in carriers, and then the oldest one just sitting upright, and it's 2 carts.
Yeah.
And they're looking at us, and they're looking at the kids, and they're looking at, mom and I. I'm like, how old are you guys? And we're like, oh, 26, 27.
Jeez. All you had to say isn't this the multiply and replenish the earth thing they talked about? Like,
that's what I'm supposed to do here. Excuse me, I wouldn't have it any other way. I would have having them that close, and everything that we did. They're friends. They all ride the bus together. They all go to the same school. They all know each other's old friends. It's perfect. Like they all watch out for each other.
oh man, that's fantastic. Love to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, good, Chase. I love it. That's what a journey you've been on since coming home from Scotland. Now, take us back to your experience. I mean, start at the MTC, and we'll go through areas, companions, and all the fun times that you want to share with us.
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of companions. I thought something was wrong with me for a long time. Just I got a new companion pretty much every moves. I had a new one.
Really?
Except for Elder Allen, who was my first, and then like right towards the end, I had a new companion every 6 weeks, and I was like, man, I must be a dud.
Jeez Louise.
But I MTC went to, of course, Preston, England, landed, and was like, this is wild. I was used to kind of traveling internationally. Kind of before that, I had done a couple things. I had gotten a couple jobs like laying carpet, and the company I worked for traveled internationally, and they actually did temples.
Oh, nice.
And so I'd helped them out and moved around and done a little bit of stuff for that. But Preston, England, I had this was this was my first real experience, being like fully engrossed in the church. Like, that sounds terrible to say, but like, coming off from not wanting to go to all of a sudden wanting to go, getting everything ready to all of a sudden be like, all right, well, you're here, so now it's put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing, and get to give.
Yeah.
And so MTC was cool. I liked it. We had a lot of fun. there wasn't any, some of these guys, shenanigans between the elders and the sisters, this and that. There was absolutely none of that with us. There was, because we had a couple guys, we had some German elders. There was a kid there from Luxembourg, but he'd been studying at BYU. So we were more fascinated with him because we're like, buddy, your country barely exists, but it's like super rich.
Yeah.
So tell us how this works, and talking to him, and he was, so we got to learn a lot about him. And I remember that was the first time, I tried mushy peas and dandelion burdock. I don't know if you guys like dandelion burdock to drink. I don't.
It's terrible. It's so bad.
It's so bad. Root beer all day, straight up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed.
I'll die on that hill.
It's not the same at all.
No, not even remotely close. I remember sitting there in the cafeteria, and they're like, "You guys drink root beer? This is, right up. This is the same."
No way.
Sorry, gentlemen. This is not it. So
apples to oranges for sure.
Yeah. So the MTC was cool, and we did, went out and chapped, and that was wild just because I was really nervous because I also felt kind of like, I felt like I didn't deserve to be there because like my knowledge wasn't at the same level as like everybody else's. And like, there's kids there who'd prepared their whole lives, and and like I had growing up, and my parents got divorced. I was in and out of church, and moving around a lot, so it wasn't like a huge priority. And so, but I just kind of took that as like a challenge of like, well, I got to get myself to that spot. Like I need to not fake it till you make it, but I'm gonna, get there.
But fake it till you make it.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
sure.
Exactly.
You said it perfectly.
Yeah, and so that's. It worked out, and I had a real good time. The MTC was good. That jet lag absolutely crushed me for the first like 4 or 5 days.
Yes. Agreed.
And so that was cool. And we got on the train heading up north, and the MTC, just kind of said, make sure your ties are this length, and this and that. Make sure your shoes are polished. And so we did everything. And Elder Nielsen and Elder Blake were the assistants. And I remember getting off at that stop in Edinburgh, and you smell everything, and you're like, man, what is going on? Oh. And that's the first thing. The first thing Elder Blake and Elder Nielsen told us to put our bags down and stand up. And they went out and they were like checking the length of our ties, and colors, and like they looked at our white handbooks to see if we had wrote anything in them, like the back of our badges. They were checking that stuff out, looking at our shoes, and they're like, "No, those shoes are dirty. You guys are gonna fix those." I'm like, "Oh man, we just got on a train. We just traveled." Well, little did I know that like I didn't my period of hammer time, I was kind of on the tail end of it, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't at its peak. But there was definitely a lot. That doctrine and how they like pushed it was like ripe. So I remember myself looking at a couple other missionaries, and we're looking at each other like, "What is this?" Like, because they were talking about us like changing our haircuts, and like they wanted us to like all have like the Elder Bednar like side part, and like they were like trying to push it. They were like, "Hey, this is what you guys need to do. This is this," and we're like, "No, no, my haircut's just fine." They didn't have a problem with it. The president doesn't have a problem with it. I don't care. If the person that matters in my brain, if he doesn't have an issue, it's fine.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay, well, this is gonna be spicy. This is gonna be fun. And then I got Elder Allen right out of the rip. That was my trainer. And,
Drew.
Oh yeah, Drew. And him and I still talk every once in a while now. And we went to lunch together, I don't know, a couple months ago. Just like our companionship, it was just like an instant blast.
And, sounds great.
Oh yeah, and just finding out more about him and how he's up in northern Utah, and we call his Book of Death, and he had all of his trophies of like all the animals that he had killed. It was a photo album, like a legit photo album of everything. It was just him and all those animals. Like, golly, he's like, yeah, I'm proud of those. I'm like, you should be.
Most people keep a little book of pictures of their family, and his was just of all the roadkill and everything else in between.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So good.
Oh, and I feel like he did me dirty. So we got off the train, and he goes, "Elder, we got to hurry. We have an appointment." And so we were in Aberdeen with the Bridge Dawn Ward, Well, which part of that had King's Cross College University, which had all the dorms.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you gentlemen were up there, it's like Nigerian city, because all those guys are up there for the subsea engineering degrees. They're all up there doing oil field stuff. And so he's like, he's a member. They had baptized him. I just remember his name, Paulinus. I'm actually friends with him on Facebook. And Paulinus Omika Ogu. And I remember sitting here talking to him. Well, he was talking to us. And the other animal was like, look at this brand new missionary I got. All right, Elder Crockett, let's see what you got. And I'm like, whoa. Pump the brakes here. I can't even understand the guy. So, we're going through all that. I'm trying to stumble my way through this appointment, and we had a dinner appointment afterwards, and it's just pouring down rain. And we go to he was fine. He was good. It was just kind of like a checkup, like, hey, man, how you doing? How's things going? Do you need help? Do you need this to do anything? And we go to, I don't even remember the member. I just remember it was pouring down rain, and they open the door, and they're like, oh, we got a fresh one. And I'm like, that's the only thing I remember understanding from that point to the end.
Oh my gosh. What an experience on your first night to be thrown into a DA and try to understand a word that comes out of somebody's mouth. That's insane.
Oh yeah, it was. I had no clue. And I just kind of looked at him, and finally I kind of got to the point where I was just smile and kind of nod, when you can't hear somebody.
Yes.
And you're trying to do that. And then after that, Elder Allen was like, hey, you're going to drive. Oh, okay. So, I stumble. I drove a manual, so I knew how to do that, but not, shifting with my left hand. Well, we're like on our second or third day, and we're coming down from like the north side of like Bridge of Dawn area. I didn't know about speed cameras.
Oh no.
And he hasn't said a word about them.
Jeez.
I think I'm going like 55, and I'm slowing down, but it had turned to 40. And all of a sudden, I see the lights go off. I'm like, dude, what is that? Something just flashed. And he goes, oh, you just got a ticket.
Jeez,
thanks a lot, man.
I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh yeah. And he's like, in about 2 weeks, you're going to get a letter from the mission home, and it's going to be a speeding ticket. It's going to be about 90 pounds. And I was like, dude, that's like $170.
Jeez. Whoa.
With Elder Allen, I was with him for 3 months, and we had a real good time. We were teaching this lady that she wouldn't meet us anywhere other than like her doorstep, because her husband was so controlling. He didn't want us to talk to her outside. We couldn't like find like a park bench. Couldn't do anything. But she could sit like on her stoop. But her stoop was like in the back of an alley, and it was like a wooden staircase. And if Drew listens to this, this might flash his memory, because I only remember this because I read my journal. And there was a drunk Polish guy coming around a corner, and we're like, oh, hey man, of course we're trying to GQ him, golden question him. So we're just slinging those little cards, just trying to see how many we could get him, see what we could get, which angle we could get him. And the guy kissed Drew, was nodding and muttered something, and just gave him a big old kiss. And we're all, Liv and I looked at each other, and we're like, it was like 8:00 at night, pitch black outside, and we're just like, okay, well, let's hope this lesson goes a little bit better than that. And this sweet lady, she didn't end up not getting baptized, but we taught her for a hot minute, just like right on her doorstep. And but Drew and I, we had success. My love for curry was born. And with Drew, in between curries and kebabs, and the guy we baptized was actually from India, Sarl, and that was the jam. You go to his house, and he would just cook you a mean curry. It'd smell like it for like a week afterwards, but.
Oh man.
And so I was there, and then he left, and I think he became zone leader, and then I got Andrew Bonin.
Oh, yeah.
Right after that, and I remember hearing about Elder Bonin, because in the Aberdeen Bridge of Dawn flat, it was a 4-man flat.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of the other elders were like, "Oh man, this guy's like super serious," and I was like, "Oh no." I like to be serious when it needs to be, like when it's time to get stuff done, but most of the other time I just want to have fun, like make it better, makes the days better, and they're like, "Oh no, he's like straight, he's like all business." I'm like, "Oh no." And but Elder Bonin was great. You know, we had a good time, and I learned a lot from him. I learned about like from him. My biggest thing was like eloquently like speaking and like portraying your point and being like it was awesome. Like it was a totally different side. Elder Allen was great. I learned a lot from him, but then Elder Bonin came in. And I was like, all right, this is another way. I felt like it was just two sides of the coin. It was really cool.
Hmm.
And because you know at this time they're doing every zone conference is all about being blunt as you can, not hiding in generalities, um, being straightforward, and you're doing like role playing after role play after role play. Like district meetings were about it, zone conferences were about it, and I just remember that Hammer Time. It was calling, reporting like crazy. Like I just remember them always on the phone.
I don't know how you guys did that and kept a phone battery all day.
Dude, I don't know. I mean, we were the district leader companionship, and I remember looking Elder Allen and Elder Bonin seemed to really like they really handled it well. But I just remember thinking, looking, I'm like, dude, those guys are always on the phone. Always. Like you'd go out in GQ and it was always he was there, but it was they were on the phone, talking to the companionships or talking to the zone leaders. And the zone leaders at the time were Elder Landon Wells, who you've had on, and Elder Gardner, Steve Gardner, who you've also had on.
Yeah.
And at that time, they were good too. And I mean, those guys were. I remember Eldon or Steve Gardner was talking about like working out and getting fit. Well, Elder Allen and I were not about that. You just had to do, the bare minimum of what was expected. And they would get like, Elders, we're going to go run. We're going to go run by the pier. And I think one day we finally committed to do it. And that was the only day that we did that. Because we got, I don't know, about 200 yards into that run. And we're like, oh, no. We're good, gentlemen. Our car's over here. We're just going to hop in our car and we'll go finish our studying and do all that. But it was great. We had a lot of fun. The ward, I think people have kind of previously touched on the Bridge of Dawn ward. It was kind of they weren't sure about us. Some of the leadership weren't really. I don't think were really pumped. They had an American family there who actually worked for Chevron, and I remember their name is I believe it's the Veets, and but they were originally from like Texas.
Yeah.
And we used to. I remember Elder Allen was like, "Dude, I've been trying to get a dinner appointment at this house forever," and then we finally got in. And like I remember them telling us because I don't know if anyone's ever shown you like President Frederick's like the funnel that he made, like the teaching funnel.
Mm-hmm.
Which pretty much is like now you look at it, it's a business funnel, right? And how you
Yep.
get which at the time I was like, oh man, this is genius. But now that
You just stole it right out of a business book.
oh yeah. And I think he was the ward mission leader, and he wanted none of that. He was like, your guys' funnel, and he held up like a copy of it and was like crumpled it up and like threw it away. And we're like, oh no.
Yikes.
This is right out of the gate, like right first thing into the dinner appointment. We're like, this is going to be a rough 45 minutes to an hour. Well, I mean, him and his wife were really sweet and they're really nice, but they wanted to take, they were running and gunning, right? All the missionaries were just push like a racehorse. Everybody had to be on it, and they were not about that. They wanted to take their time, which I get them. I mean, we found a couple people we baptized there that one's named Scott Ross, and I remember we taught him for like 3.5, 4 months, and we taught him the day that Michael Jackson died. And he sits there and he gets his phone, and this notification comes across, and we're talking about the plan of salvation, and he starts bawling because Michael Jackson had died. And we're like, Scott, what's happening? What's the problem? What's going on? And he turns his phone around. He's like, Mikey's dead.
Jeez.
And we're like, that's it? Like, okay. I mean, no one in your family's hurt? Like, everybody's okay? Yeah, Michael Jackson's dead. I've listened to him for all these years. And it derailed our plan of salvation, even though it would have been a perfect tie-in. Every time we kept trying to steer it, he was not having it. And
And if you join the church, you can go and get baptized for Michael Jackson at the temple.
oh yeah, and, yeah,
That would have been an odd conversation in itself.
oh yeah. And you know how you've had investigators or people who've been like severe alcoholics their life and they stop, and those tendencies still kind of keep showing up. They're still there.
Yeah.
And it was every fast Sunday, he would get up and he would stand up and clap. That was great. I love you. I love your spirit. That's amazing. We're like, Scott, shut up, sit down. Pulling out his suit jacket. We're like, Scott, you don't do that. And he's like, but someone needs to tell him. And you're like, you can tell him afterwards. And meanwhile, all this is going on. Bishop Hole would just eyeball us, just like, you boys got to figure this out.
Oh man.
But he came to church. He passed the interviews. He did everything. Like, he was there. I remembered somebody else with Elder Allen. We had a guy, and he talked about him. His name was William Skillen. We called him the Skillinator. And he believed, how you get those emails, and it's like, I'm the Prince of Nigeria. If you wire me $40, I'll wire you my fortune of, whatever, couple things.
Yeah.
He was heavily invested into that scheme. So much so that he was like, I have this Nigerian guy, he's going to fly in. And like every time we taught him, that's all he talked about, of how he's going to get all this money. And he never got baptized. It's probably a good thing. But like, you'd go to his apartment and he had, like when you watch like a heart monitor, it goes flat and then it goes up and down for your heart rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
He had that painted around his whole apartment in a big blue line. And he equated that to his life and like his life's energy. And I'm sure Elder Allen has videos, but I remember we would turn our cameras on and put it on video, and we'd put it in the bottom of our backpack facing up, and we would record our conversations because he would say the most off the wall things. And he was dead serious. And he would like print off, he'd get on like PowerPoint and he'd print himself like certificates. And it was like, William Skillen is hereby certified to be a good guy because he exercised a good attitude for 3 weeks straight. And he'd frame it and it was put it on his wall.
That's epic.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
If we wanted to pad our numbers in any way, we're like, hey, we need to teach. William Skillen was the go-to of like, hey, we got one.
Is he progressing? No, but we taught him.
No, he's getting there. We got him to come to church. He would come to church, but then he wouldn't want to do anything else after that. So then after Elder Bonin, I had Elder Waite, and I remember. So at this time, I still, my girlfriend, my now wife, she would send like packages of like American candy, like like the Sour Patch watermelon squares or cinnamon bears, or and she would write letters and stuff like that. And Elder Waite had just gotten John Deered, and I'm sorry he didn't mention this in his podcast, and I feel bad, but he had just gotten that, and so he was on like a rampage of like trying to get other missionaries to write their girlfriends off.
Oh, no.
He almost got me. Like I have a journal entry where like I wrote it of like, I think today's going to be the day. Like I don't think I want to do this anymore. And he'd be like, Elder, you don't want to get crushed. You don't want to get heartbroken. You don't want to do this. You want to be happy, and you don't want to have to go through that pain like I did, and this and that. And I have it in my journal, and I ended up scribbling that whole section out. When I came home, I was like, oh, you don't need to read this part.
Jeez. That was his last transfer, right?
Yeah. I killed him off, and he was the most photogenic mission companion I had my entire mission.
So he got that letter right before he went home?
My understanding was, it was either the moves before he came to me or the moves before that. So,
oh my gosh!
But that's all I had heard from Elder Waite. They're like, he's going to try to get you to write your old lady off.
I'm sorry to hear that, Sean. I know he'll listen to this. That's terrible news. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jace.
Oh yeah, it's great. I had a great time with him, and I learned a ton from him, and we had a lot of cool stories. And we related quite well because I mean his dad rides and races motorcycles, and so we would always talk about that. And he had a really sweet watch, and I remember we would always talk about his watch, this, and he would teach me, we when we'd steer back into missionary work. But we had a blast. But like I have a photo album open here, and it's literally just pictures and pictures of just him and I with anybody and everybody that we could just get a picture with. He was all about it.
Nice.
Yeah, and then he went home. Then I got a missionary, Derek Kelly, and he was out of Arizona, and he
Hmm.
was cool too. He was real quiet. He was a fresh district leader, and I remember he'd gotten in a crane accident. His dad, I guess, had owned like a crane company, and right above the ball, there's a weight, and he was hooking up something, and that whole line snapped, and that ball landed like right on his shoulder, and so that guy had a jacked up back, and he slept like an hour a night. And I remember always like, Elder, we got to get. And he was in pain, and like Sister Frederick and him were always on the phone, like trying to figure out his back. But that kid powered through it. Like he would hardly sleep at all. His back was always killing him, but he would get out there, and we would walk all through the university, and we walked everywhere, and he did it. But he was a real quiet guy, but he was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
And then after that, I moved to Livingston. That was 6 months there, and I moved to Livingston and became a district leader. And I got a missionary named Brandon Brandon Wayne, and he was, put it politely, him and I didn't see eye to eye. He was an older missionary. He had been out, well over a year and change. But I had only been out 6 months, and I came in to the district leader spot, and he didn't like that. But
Hmm.
if any of you gentlemen served, anywhere near Livingston, we have Hazel Deans, she was a convert out there. We didn't baptize her, but she did. Elder Nielsen had actually baptized her, but she was rock solid. She was awesome. If you needed to join teach, she'd come out. But she was a typical, older Scottish lady. Just gave you the absolute business all the time. But she had a son. She had a son named Mark, and he was baptized too. And he was cool, and he'd come out and join teaches, and I still keep in touch with Hazel, and the people of Livingston were really good. We, that time that was the closest I ever served to Edinburgh. I never got to partake in like the mega zones, in Edinburgh or anywhere near that. That was close enough for me, and we had a good time. And I had Elder Colt, Elder Brandon Wayne left, and then Colt McQuarrie came in, and he was from Heber, but he sounded like he came from Tennessee. He had a thick country accent, and he was cool. He was, he just real quiet, real nice guy, and that's kind of about it. We didn't really see much success there. That area was we were talking to anybody and everybody, and we're trying to get referrals, and some of the members were pretty locked up and didn't want to. Some of them didn't want to help us, but the other missionaries in Bathgate on preparation days, we had become addicted to badminton.
Badminton, really?
Interesting.
It was a strong addiction because it was like preparation day. You hurry, did your emails, grocery shop as soon as you could, and then it was to the church, and it was game on. Like we even had our own like actual badminton rackets, and we were like going to the store to try to find like the better shuttlecocks, and like trying to find like, oh yeah, we were serious.
Oh my gosh.
It's
How
only
did how did this start? Was this before you got there?
yeah, I think the companionship before I'd gotten there, they'd kind of gotten into it, and they're like, elders, you're gonna want to do this, and we're like, no way. They're like, just play chair football like every other missionary does. I'm like, and they're like, no, badminton's where it's at. And the young men and young women have left it up, and we started playing and realized that we can just absolutely just hammer this thing at each other, and it wouldn't hurt.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, and so we just had an absolute blast. I was there for a short time. I was only there for 3 months, and then I whitewash trained into Kilwinning.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that's the Irvin Ward.
Yeah.
Yeah, And I mean, I don't know if you gentlemen know. I don't remember Helen Lewis, the sweet. She was like at that time she was like in her late 70s, but we had gotten special permission that we could go see her without having a third male, a third person with us.
Mhm.
She fed us every day. No ifs, ands, or
Every
buts.
day?
Every day. If you didn't show up, she called you. Where are you? Oh no, sister, we have an appointment. This and that. No, you know the deal. You're supposed to. And I mean, it wasn't anything extravagant. She had her freezer full of, like little chip buddies, the rolls with ham. And you'd heat them up, and then you'd get the French fries. You put them on. Bags of chips, crisps, candy, just whatever we wanted. And then we would leave, and she would have us open our bags, and she would put stuff in our bags, and she would go to the shop every single morning.
Wow.
And that woman was a saint. Helen Lewis, she's passed on now, but that woman was any joint teach we needed. We'd ride the number one bus because Kilwinning didn't have a car, and so it pretty much covered, Kilwinning, Saltcoats, Ardrossan, and then the occasional you'd get up to like what is it, Largs, right up north of Ardrossan. But yeah, she was the jam. This little old lady just cruising around. Her family wanted absolutely nothing to do with church, but she didn't find the church until after her husband had died.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, like if we were there for Christmas, our first Christmas, and she was like thoroughly upset we didn't plan to be hanging out with her to watch our first movie.
Wow.
And so like, for Christmas we hung out there, and she I think she got Star Trek for us, or something, the new version of Star Trek or whatever. And she had this huge, like this whole thing, this whole spread for all she wanted all four missionaries. She wanted everybody there, and we saw Kilwinning was hard, whitewash training, and
Who was your companion?
Martin Young, Elder Young.
Martin.
He's an English missionary.
Okay.
And that was at that point he was my second English missionary. Yeah, because Elder Waite and then Elder Young. Elder Young was from not far from Elder Waite actually. But I remember with him training him, I didn't know how to tell him, but he like really focused on like his tie and his hair, and I'm like, Elder, you're vain, dude. Just you got to do it, and we got to be out, because we had the assistants made us write all the words that we couldn't say in the back of the white handbook. So like cool, awesome, bro, sweet, like any American slang. I still have it in my white handbook. In the back, made us write these words. Absolutely no Scottish slang, and we couldn't abbreviate. So like we couldn't say P-Day. Like they said that was lazy. So you had to say, "Oh, I'm on preparation day."
My word.
Yeah, yeah. And so I had Elder Young, and we tried, and our Ardrossan was hard, and we had one guy. I'll tell you the story because this is the one story I end up telling the most about Scotland. And I mean, we've all seen the Orange Lodges, right? They have the Orangeman parades and so on and so forth. And you know how Masons on the West Coast are just ripe everywhere. Yep. And we end up GQing this less active guy. I mean, no teeth, typical, guy who's on methadone. And he's like, "Oh, I'm a less active member." He's like, "But my whole family were members. My parents were baptized, and then we were baptized as kids." He's like, "But I chose to not go down that road." He's like, "But I have a cousin who's really interested, and he's been having these visions." And so, of course, we're like, "Great, this is it's gonna go well." And I look at my companion, and I'm like, "Elder, that's not how this works. Like, we in the church believe like this. Those kind of visions that he's referring to are not like the first vision, things like that. Like this is different." So we end up seeing him, and of course, how like doors over there you can pull up hard and it will lock it. Like those hooks will come out and lock him. We go through his house, and this dude is enormous. Like I'm tall, like I'm 6 feet, 200 pounds. He was like 6'8", probably 350. Like he filled every sense of like it was like a vending machine on legs. This dude was huge,
Jeez Louise.
and you could see he had like a tank top on, and you could see he had tattoos, but the lights were kind of dark, so you couldn't really see like what tattoos they were. So we're like, all right, Elder, let's do it. We go in there, we have a meeting with him. It was okay, he tells us about these visions, and we kind of brushed them off like, yeah, some orb that you see in a dream is not a vision. And he's like, well, I want you to come back tomorrow. And we're like, cool, our schedule is empty. So this is perfect. We pencil in. We come back the next day. And before we had left the first visit, we'd pretty much told him that his visions were junk. Like it's him just having a dream of whatever he's feeling or whatever he's drank or, he's been inebriated by something. He didn't like that. But remember, all of our teaching said not hiding behind generalities, being straight to the point. So, I took that 1,000% serious. Like I had no filter. It was straight business all the time. And so we go to the second appointment, and he goes, "All right, elders," and we go in, and we hear him lock the door, and we're like, what's happening?" And we had just kept walking in, and it was a little hallway, and then it turned into his like his living room. Had these huge windows, and he had like little figurines of dragons everywhere. And we're like, "Oh, it's good. Thank you for seeing us, this and that." And we don't hear anything, and I kind of poke my head around, and he's not there. And all of a sudden, I see the door flap kind of kick open, and a liquid comes out. It was gas. And he lit it on fire eventually. But he lit it on fire, and Elder Young and I were like, "What a second." Well, we ended up getting out. He tried to light the door on fire and the whole 9 yards. We ended up getting out, and he had a giant swastika tattoo right in the middle of his chest. And I mean, the size of like a dinner plate. So
Man,
my goodness.
with his tank top on, you couldn't see it, but his throat had a huge palm. The whole orange palm shenanigans. And then underneath that, he had that big swastika. And we're like, oh, dang, we want absolutely nothing to do with this dude. This dude is like bad news. I'll take the accountability on this one. We're not going to baptize this guy. We're out. We're going to be. He just tried to light us on fire in his apartment. We want absolutely nothing to do with this.
What logic is that? Let me just lock them in my own house and start it on fire.
Oh, but he didn't like that he thought we had made fun of him for his visions.
Oh boy.
Whatever substance he was on, that was what he concluded. Yeah. And so I remember having this mission. I only had Elder Young at that point for like few weeks.
What a greeny experience. Oh my goodness.
It's like, dude, this guy just tried to light us on fire.
How did you get out?
Well, he had opened the door. He had unlocked it. So he did all that, poured the gas in, and you could hear him trying to get it. And he had unlocked it and pushed the door open, and we just opened the door and got out. Wow. But he had opened just enough, but he was kind of like off to the side that we just hurried and he went out of there. And he tried to search it because the number one bus is the only bus that we took in and out of that whole area. And he tried to look for us for like a few weeks afterwards. And so we rode that bus enough that like the bus drivers all had an understanding that like, yeah, these guys are kids. Like, and so we would sit up top right in front underneath the camera. And so we'd sit there and we'd watch everybody get on and off that bus. And if we saw him get on, we'd just hurry and jump off. And we ended up never seeing him again, but it was wild, And so
that's unbelievable. Wow, what a story.
Yeah, it was good. I look back and I'm just like, dude, that dude tried to light us on fire in his own place.
Jeez.
And wow. So then Elder Young moved on, and I got Elder Collins, who was from Southern England. He was a little bit of an older missionary, and he was good. He'd wake up in the middle of the night and he's on the phone with his parents, which nowadays is not that big of a deal, but back then it was like, oh my gosh, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? Can't be calling your parents even though you guys live in the same we're in the same continent. We can't do this. And I think I was a little much for him, like just my personality, and like we didn't really butt heads, but like we didn't really like kind of jive. But I remember the one major story I had with him. We were walking up our Drawson's main street. It's raining, and I had this huge pea coat that I had gotten from a member. Huge. It looked like a Lord of the Rings jacket. Like you put the hood on, the hood was huge. This huge thing. We're walking, and he had this like Berg House, really nice jacket, whatever. And this drunk guy comes up to us at the bus and threatens to pull a gun on us. Out of all things, I'm like, "Oh, a gun, really?" And I look down, and he's wearing an ankle bracelet that's beeping. And I'm like, "Oh, this old boy's on house arrest. He is not supposed to be out here."
Oh man.
And he couldn't stand up. He couldn't stand up straight. And so in my brain, I go, "Okay, well, I'm not drunk. He's super drunk. So if he does pull a gun, I feel like I could push him away faster than he could get a shot off." So I'm like, "All right, let's do it. Go pull it. Go for it." He's like, I got a gun. I'm going to kill you guys." And I'm like, "Let's do it. Go for it." I was like, "I'm good with my maker. Let's do it right now." And I look over, and my companion is about 100 yards down the road.
Jeez.
I step in it. The guy never had anything on him. He was just drunk and high. And he ended up falling asleep in that bus stop. But yeah, I was like, "Elder, you can't leave me like that." And he's like, "You're so stupid. You're crazy. You're gonna get us killed." And I'm like, "Dude, that guy couldn't even stand up. Even if he did have one, he just over."
Oh boy.
Yeah,
We've heard quite a few stories about that little coast off of Saltaire. Is it Saltaire and
yeah, salt coats and
Saltcoats? That's right. My gosh.
there's some roughness out there, especially those three little towns. It and I was there for a total of 6 months, and because when right after Elder Collins, I moved to Dundee, and I was only in Dundee for 6 weeks.
Hmm.
And I was there with Ashton Rich, and we were in Liff Road, and I mean the Keoghs were like a stone's throw from our apartment, so
Yeah.
we were like right there. And McKay Livingston and I am trying to remember his companion's name. They were like a half mile from us, and I remember it was like every preparation day we were together, and then the days that we had like big zone conferences, we used to just have them because the main bus to get to the train station was right outside our apartment. So they would just have them stay at our apartment. Elders, just come stay with us. And we had like this big futon, and it was just like it was a blast. That was some of the funnest time we had that entire time we're there, because McKay was an absolute blast. And I mean Ashton was really cool too. And I cannot remember his companion for the life of me. But while we were there, Iron Brew is everyone's obsession, right? When you go over there. But
Yes, it is.
we had a real fixation for the large glass bottles. And in front of like our main study table, we could see on how many empty glass bottles we could collect during our 6 week rotation.
Jeez.
We had a solid pyramid going, like a solid. There was probably 30 bottles by the time we said, "Hey, it's probably enough. We need to go.
Probably enough.
This is probably enough." And we had a lot of fun there, and we had some success. We baptized a 14-year-old boy, and it was good. It was a good time. I was kind of bummed out I was there so short, because I had heard so many people had been to Dundee and they had such a great experience, and I was only there for 6 weeks, and I loved it. I mean, the ward was great. Even you would go over to the other ward, and they were great too. It was good. And then right after that, I turned around and went right back to Irvine.
Seriously.
So I spent 6 months, went away for 6 weeks, and then I was in Irvine for a total of 9 months after that.
Wow.
For a total of 15 months of my mission I spent in the same ward. But this time I went back as a zone leader, and so I got to see a different side of things, and that was fun and also very interesting. We had the Beef branch, and at that time it was kind of like where President Frederick would put missionaries who were once really strong, or they had some issues, or they weren't up to par, whatever the standard. And that branch was only like 7 people, and so it was like not there to go to die, but it was kind of like, oh, we're not really like overly concerned if the work doesn't really happen, kind of thing. But the missionaries, they were finding people, and they ended up baptizing a guy, and we interviewed him, and I had to interview him because he had gone to jail for growing up. He had been part of like whatever drug ring that was in that area, like between Beeve and like outskirts of Kilmarnock.
Hmm.
And so president was like, hey, you got to interview him. Like, I'll give you the permission, you can interview him. All right. So we pull up, the missionaries are already there, and so then we pull up, we're there. Well, on the other end, on each end of the street, there were people standing there watching us. Well, of course, over there, the detectives wear suit and tie. So from a distance, everyone thinks you're cops until you get closer and they see your badge and they're like, oh, you're Bible bashers. And you're like, well, not quite. We're different than that, but sure. But there was these kids watching us, and then they went into this house. Well, they thought he was narking. He thought we were cops, and they thought we were there to interrogate him, and he was going to throw like all his previous ring under the bus. So I do the interview. I go over everything I'm supposed to. He passes. Awesome guy. And we hear a knock on the door, and it's like 4 kids with swords.
Swords?
Straight up, like you see in the movie. Answer the door, and they're just like, "Ching," swords out. And he shuts the door, and he's like, "Elders, if you go out the back door through the garden, it goes down this hill, and the bus stop is right there." And Elder Wheat was my companion at the time, and I just remember him and I absolutely cooking it down that hill, just running.
My gosh.
So we went one way, the other missionary companionship went the other way, and ended up getting into a car, and we hurried and got on the bus. But you turn around and you just have this like small group of people chasing us down this hill because they thought we were all cops.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah. It was great. He was good. Last my understanding, he was still active and still participating and everything. But yeah, he didn't have any more shenanigans show up at his door after that. But by this time, the urban ward, I mean, they were awesome. You had Bishop Billy Govins and like George Broadfoot. These guys were all missionary like focused. The Wilds at that time were in it to win it. I mean, we've all heard stories about the urban youth, right? And they were wild and rambunctious, but you could count them on to teach. And we did footballs with them on Saturday morning and trying to bring investigators. And it's after spending 6 months there, and we were getting in real good, and then spending another 9 months there. It was man, you were getting fed twice a day for every day. They're like, oh, I'm trying to lose some weight, and they're like, no, you're not. You're gonna
have some more.
Yeah, you're gonna pack the weight on.
Yep.
But we saw a lot of really good success while we were there. Elder Wheat was awesome, and I had a bunch of companions, like Dustin Evans. He was a good one. I had Elder Tony Souter, who was a Romanian that lives actually here in Utah. That was fun too. And we baptized. We had actually GQ'd him, a Slovakian husband and wife, and I still actually talk to the wife today. The husband's passed on, but it took us at that time. It took us like 3 months to get them to like even come to church, because she was from Slovakia, but they didn't have church material in her language. The closest thing they had was Slovenian, but then you had to call the mission home and says, hey, I need all the pamphlets, or can you get me to preach my gospel in Slovenian and a Book of Mormon in Slovenian so we can teach these folks? Well, that took another 6-7 weeks to just try to track that down. So we were trying to teach her this and that. She had a born again background, and but she fed us. If we didn't come to her house every day for lunch, she would call and yell at us. Regardless if she wanted to go to church or not, she knew that we were kids living over there, and she fed us every day. Didn't matter. Didn't matter what we had going on. If we already had appointments, if you were not at her house at noon,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, she was awesome, and all the way up till it was I had the opportunity and privilege to baptize her and her husband, and it was such a bittersweet thing because I remember from the very beginning teaching them all the way through, and we finally got them to they understood everything, and we ended up getting them the right materials, and once they had that, it just like clicked. Everything for them was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh yeah, that makes way more sense because they can actually understand it. Um,
Hmm.
and it was awesome. And then we had so President Yates, who was the Paisley Stake president, had been working on I can't remember. He was the patriarch of the last name's Jenkins. We baptized the husband, but at the time, or we baptized one of the daughter's husbands. Um, but the whole family was in the urban ward, and the son-in-law wanted absolutely nothing to do with church, nothing. But like his wife, sister, mom, or grandma, granddad at the time, he had MS. I remember his first name was Roger, but I cannot remember his last name. But he had for years had the missionaries in and out, teaching them. Douglas Yates would have them come over and have the missionaries there. They would do activities, and he would come to everything. He'd come to all the ward functions. If you invited him to do something, he would go. Uh, his name's Tommy Jenkins. I mean, he's still an active member today, and I love him. I had the opportunity of teaching him and watching that all unfold, like watching the final meet, like and the teaching lesson that we had with them in their house, of like finally it all clicked for them.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was like years of missionary work had finally come to fruition, and it was awesome. And we got to right right before that is when Ireland came into the picture. So
Hmm.
the Paisley zone was the first zone to get Irish missionaries, and pretty much at that time, half of my companionships all got an Irish missionary. They just said we had 16 companionships, and they said, "All right, you guys got 8," and all the other zones got like 1, 2, maybe.
Jeez.
So my companion came over, and it was his my Michael Sean Covey, grandson of Franklin, the famous Stephen R. Covey,
Hmm.
and Franklin Covey, the famous planners. Everyone knows Stephen R. Covey from writing those 7 great habits of like entrepreneurs or something like that. But it was definitely very weird because coming from like hammer time, everything being accounted for, every minute being accounted for, whereas Ireland was the exact opposite. Was like, we're going to chap doors all day and we're going to see what this is like. And
Crazy.
it was like, it was such a mind game. I struggled so hard. Like, and not because not to his fault, like, or he was great. Michael Sean was great. The way that he taught was so sincere and so great. Like, he wanted to listen so hard to everybody. And it was just, he was so enveloped and everything, but he was okay if we had a 2-hour break in our schedule and just hanging out. And I'm like, oh no, we have 2 hours of we're gonna go GQing. We have this and that. Like, we got to fill every moment because I got to count for everything. And the beginning was a rough start, seeing both sides, because then that was right. I mean, I guess kind of right in that same area is when President Frederick ended, and then President Griffiths came on.
Yeah, that's right.
And polar opposites. I mean, we've all heard of they were complete opposites. President Griffiths came on and was like, accountability is all on you. It's all about what you do, what you're accountable for. Like, it's all your accountability is, if I'm not going to tell you what music you can and cannot listen to because the accountability is in between you and, Father in heaven. It's not to me. It's not to your other leaders. He's like, it's you have to be accountable to that choice.
Hmm.
And a lot of us older missionaries were just like, wait, what? And he did away with all this reporting, and so we were just so programmed to being like, all right, it's 9 o'clock. I have a call at 9:05, 9:07, 9:10, 9:15, and then 9:30, and then I got to make my phone call to the zone leaders or the assistants by 9:35, 9:40. Like it was just everything was so structured. And he was like, "No, if you don't have anything to report that night, don't report it. You guys will at least report like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Sunday nights."
Jeez.
And so it was just like someone just, for me, it was like someone just like pulled the e-brake.
Yeah.
It was such a mind game of just like I just go 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 go, and all of a sudden, how about not just kind of relax, take it at your own pace. Like zone conferences weren't, you weren't doing huge role plays about no generalities and being blunt and speaking exact truths and pinpointing exactly where everything is. Like it was now more of feeling and how, like, we were watching Preach My Gospel DVDs, and which they don't even do those anymore. That was like a pilot thing. Like every zone conference was like, here, watch like an hour of Preach My Gospel DVDs, and it was like someone decided to do a documentary on this missionary couple in like Texas, like this whole district, and they just like watched them.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if you gentlemen have heard those or seen any of those.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like in Texas. I think they're in Texas, and it followed like 3 or 4 companionships, like two sisters, or two sister companionships and 2 elders, and it was like it walked them through, like it showed everything from like their like waking up, doing their exercising, to their planning, to their like companionship studies, what they learned. It was just like if you just blogged your day, but
Huh.
they were like these pristine, like cut, finished, edited, produced things, and they were pushing these out. And they were test piloting them in some missions, and I guess we were ended up being one of them to see if they worked. I don't know if it did.
It's not a.
What an odd thing to have as a missionary. Like, hey, we're gonna have somebody in your apartment in Texas watch you all day. Like,
Yeah.
Man, that would be some extreme accountability right there.
Yeah, or just GQing in general, and then having your companion there and turning around and be like, "Don't mind the camera crew that's behind me. Just
That's exactly right.
ignore them."
Gee,
Yeah. So
crazy.
it was good. I was still in Irvin at that time, and so we were just getting it. Everybody knew us. Like you'd walk through city center, and everybody knew, because I'd been there for so long, and I'd talked to so many people that you'd walk through city center, and I knew at least a dozen people that we'd stop and talk to, and then we'd find a ton of less active members that they were baseball baptisms for way back when, and their families all got baptized, and they ended up moving from Edinburgh or Dundee, and they were living in Irvin. And
Wow.
it was good. And then Michael, the Covey moved on, and I got Elder Cavijo from Spain. And and by this time, when we in the apartment, the zone leader flat in Irvin had an attic, and you open up the attic, and they had built like this study nook. You pulled the stairs down, and there was like seats. I don't know if he was like an architecture, like he did anything in architecture, but it was like these huge easels and lights and like a huge skylight. Well, we found this and had a couple boxes, and we just moved the dude's boxes, and we just moved our study upstairs. So every morning you just pull the attic down, you climb up the stairs, and you were chilling in the attic doing in your study, doing everything, and it was like kind of like our little secret compartment. Ends up finding out, I guess the landlord found out like 2 or 3 moves after I left, and it was a big no dice. I think they got kicked out of the flat after that, but yeah, it was awesome. Everyone knew that if you went on exchange with the Paisley Zone leaders, you got to hang out in the attic, and you just had all your information and post notes and quotes, and it was like our own little cave of just scripture and knowledge. And it was a lot of fun. And an elder Cavijo and I, he was, like I said, he was from Spain, and it was good. The ward was still good at that time, and they were cranking out people, all sorts of people left and right. That ward had the missionary bug, and having the President Yates in the ward helped too, and because it was his whole family, they were all awesome. And then I got shipped up to Inver Gordon for my last 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was cool. And I had a missionary, Sam Whitmer, and he was really quiet. But at that time, the Invergordon branch was in a bank, an old bank. I don't think it is now, but the old bank, the primary room was the vault. They would open the vault door, and you'd see all the kids' drawings and all the seats, and seats everywhere. And I was always nervous. I'm like, if you shut that and just something happens, like, you know how to open that, like just to be. And President Allison, President Allison was the branch president at the time, and so it was cool, man. Invergordon, we did more driving than anything because we stayed in Inverness.
Yeah.
We shared the Inverness flat, and so it was you're either in Invergordon, Ullapool, anywhere in between, just constantly. And I mean, those you just came back from there, so I mean, and then we went to President Allison would be like, "Hey, show up on this P day at like 4 a.m. I'm gonna take you guys somewhere." And we're like, "All right, cool." And the next thing you know, we're in the Isle of Skye, and he's like, we're in like Portree and taking us all around, and we're going everywhere. And we're like, "President, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon." He's like, "Don't worry, I'll get you back." And he would just hammer down, and we would just
Jeez.
get to getting.
Yeah, haven't driven those roads. That's an intense drive.
Oh yeah. And this old dude, he just had this old turboed Audi, and he just got it. Just
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that branch is still. I know the branch is still open because I talked to a couple people from up there, and yeah, that area was hard just because those little towns were so small, and like the main street really wasn't ever that busy, and so like even if you tried to catch them at the right time, and the members more lived like on the outskirts and like the suburbs of them, and so they didn't really have neighbors, and some of them weren't. The missionaries had really penetrated that area, I guess, and so we were like branching out, going to like Ullapool and trying to go to Thurso, even though there was nothing up there. You try to go to Thurso, try to drum something up, and we ended up doing a lot of stuff, helping up the Inverness branch, and running to we try to take a jog to Loch Ness every morning because it was like right down the road. It was like a couple miles.
Yeah.
So that was our morning workout, but it was good. And then then I got to come home. I got sent home after that, but it was.
What was the name of your last companion again?
Sam Whitmer.
Whitmer, that's right.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with one of the former missionaries who's been on the podcast, who's in Scotland currently, and he said, "Do you have the contact of who's in the Invergordon branch?" And I had been in the mission home just last week, and I guess there's a senior couple that's serving there now, but they were trying to give a heads up before a family of 5 showed up on Sunday and doubled their attendance. So very thoughtful of Billy Dale about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I walked through the Inverness Chapel while I was there, and pretty amazing to see the extension that they've put on the building there, and they've done some great things to enhance that, which is really cool. So
that's awesome. That's glad to hear. That was a small building when we were there.
Yeah, it's basically twice the size as it used to be. They just kind of blew out the back wall and made the parking lot a little bit bigger.
Nice. That's good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, there's the thing I was relieved to see is there's no longer the baptismal font that's in the floor in the big meeting hall.
Yeah.
It was a big upgrade for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah. We were always surprised. Bees, for being a branch, had its own building, like a legit building.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like it was just like they just divided the main room up. It was like a big great room that had a couple pews and a piano, and then it was like 2 doors, and then they had the baptismal font. But it was always surprising to me because Bede would show up and there was like 6 people there.
Yeah.
And 4 of them were the branch president and his family.
Yeah, we've heard plenty of stories of how some of the numbers were fudged for a period of time so that areas could get buildings and things like that. And it's sad to hear that some of those larger buildings have since been sold off, and some of those wards have been absorbed by others. But It's just a very interesting dynamic over there altogether with regards to the church.
Mhm.
Well, very good. Well, Chase, do you have any specific memories of President Sister Frederick or President and Sister? I lost their name. Where
Purpose.
the Griffiths? Thank you. Do you have any specific memories of them?
Yeah, so I remember. I mean, I remember getting off the train and President and Sister Frederick right there. And I mean, it's hard to tell how big somebody is in a suit.
Yeah.
He's a tall gentleman. And I was like, all right, he gives you a hug, and you're like, dude, this guy is solid. Like,
Hmm.
he's jacked.
Yeah.
And so, of course, Sister Frederick was so nice, and I remember, we stayed the night at the mission home. The next morning, we're doing everything, and the assistants are out playing basketball, and I watched him walk out. He didn't have a jacket on, and he watches them, and he looks at him. He's like, "Pass me the ball," and he just sunk this three from so far away, just tossed it up there, and just turned around and walked away, and it went in. And I was like, "Dude, this dude's a gangster." This guy. And then I find out he drinks this weird concoction of like hot water and cayenne pepper and apple cider vinegar. So of course everybody was on the train about that, and no one could keep it down. You'd try to drink it, and
Jeez.
yeah. I just remember like seeing all this, and then you get up into like the first zone conference, and you're like, this dude is frightfully intimidating. And then
Yeah.
you got to sit down and talk to him. Like, okay, this is a little bit better, but when you put his game face on, you're like, I want to be. I don't want to. I don't even want to be in with him, like seeing range of him. If he asks a question, I'm just gonna put my head straight. I don't want to be picked out for anything. I don't want to put me in the back. Hide me. Actually, just put me on the foyer. That way I can hear it, but I don't. I have to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But the Griffiths, they were so sweet, and I just, I remember coming in, and Sister Griffith's family. So I grew up in a really, really tiny town in southern Nevada. Like, population is like a couple hundred. And her sister was in that town, and we grew up, like, her family and our family grew up together.
Wow.
And so when we found out, I was like, oh, I'm from Panaca, Nevada. And she's like, excuse me? And I'm like, yeah, Panaca, Nevada. And she's like, oh, do you know this family? And I'm like, oh, yeah, very well. Like, he was a shop teacher, and, he helped us build these Jeeps, and we built this and that. And she's like, oh, that's my sister. She's like, we used to go to Panaca all the time.
That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was always, I felt like something that we could connect on every time we saw her. 'Cause she'd be like, I saw pictures of Panaca, this and that. It was great. And, my sister's good. And she's like, I just still can't believe you know where that's at. And I'm like, I've wasted many years of my life there. There's nothing in that town.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure that brought you guys together pretty often just to reminisce on things that are familiar to you guys. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was a good time, and President Griffiths was such a intense listener. Like, it just felt like, even if you're trying to explain something so simple, he just it was analyzing everything, but he just wanted to absorb everything, and then would sit there and wait, and he would wait and wait, and then he would finally give you his answer, and you'd be like, that's a really good answer. That's it's kind of maybe not the answer I was looking for, but that's probably the best option.
Hmm.
He was he was like super thoughtful, just really took his time. And with President Frederick, I just felt it, like I said, he was intimidating, but he just wanted, he wanted the work to move. He wanted that wheel to keep moving forward, and progression. And it wasn't necessarily, being afraid to not asking questions, but I always felt like he had to be very selective of what you wanted to ask, and because you I get yelled at or rebuked, but it made you learn how to, like, cut through the fluff of, like, oh, I want this answer. But he was just, his answer would be so good and just so precise, and then he'd be like, here's the scripture, and he would just open it up and be like, that's genius, thank you. So it was very interesting to see both sides. Like, one just took it very soft-hearted and just was very thoughtful and conscientious, and then the other one was like, here's the scripture behind it, here's this answer, this is what you should do, right? And you're like, yeah, all right, yes sir. So it was good. It was good to see both aspects, and it was very. It was hard to adjust to both of them, but it was also at the same time it was kind of refreshing to see that the missionary work didn't always have to be hammer time and just go 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 go. It could be the other way and still be successful and finding you know people who were kingdom builders versus just trying to stuff someone through the door 3 times and get them baptized and confirmed so you could check that box kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome. Well, Chase, you've taken us on quite a journey tonight. Thank you
Yeah,
for taking time to share your experiences. And I'm looking through the list of your companions. Apart from your first 3, we haven't talked to any of them. So if you're still in touch with them, definitely share your podcast with them and let them know we'd love to have them.
yeah.
Is there anyone in particular that you'd want to call out or shout out for us to work on?
Dustin Evans would be a good one.
Okay.
Stephen Wheat, who is from England, would be a good one.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Pat Oberbonen. That would kind of be it. Those are kind of the only ones that I'm like actively semi in touch with via Facebook,
Cool.
like that I can reach out to. Everybody else has kind of gone quiet, or I see Ashton Rich every now and then, but I believe they just had a baby.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
Elder Lovell knows Ashton too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, anybody that you're still in touch with, by all means, share the conversation we've had tonight with them and
Yep.
encourage them. They can come and directly contact us via our email, SEMpodcast@51spylaw.com, or just go to the website, 51spylaw.com, and fill out that contact form at the top. And if you haven't been in touch with people in a while, reach out to them and just say, hey, I was talking about you recently. And it makes a huge difference coming from you than from random Zach Hewlett messages on Facebook. I can assure you that, Chase.
It does, because I remember, oh man, last time, one of the few times I had actually went to lunch with Drew. He's like, hey, have you heard about the podcast? And at that time I was like, oh no. And he's like, oh, I'm about to go on it. And so then I found this on Spot. I found it on Spotify, and I listened to his interview, and I was like, oh, sweet. I think I remember I reached out to you, and I was like, oh, that'd be fun. And then just work just got like insane. And I even still have the email of just like, hey, do you guys have times available? And you're like, oh, I think we're doing something in April. And I was like, oh, that's like 2 months from now. I don't even know what I'm doing in like a week.
Yeah, we had a pretty jam-packed start to the year, and now we're trying to refill it. So we're glad that we were able to get you on the schedule when we could, Chase. So thank you for making the time tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
And last of all, we just want to express to you how much we love you. We're grateful that you're one of our brothers from the Scotland Edinburgh Mission, and honestly, we're glad to hear that the mission was still intact after we left it in shambles. I mean, everybody talks about our generation of apostate missionaries running around and doing crazy things, but it sounds like you guys put it back together again. So we certainly do. We love you and appreciate you. And more than anything, let us know how we can be of help to you. This is a huge brotherhood and sisterhood that continues to grow despite the time that we served together in the mission or didn't serve together. We still have that kindred spirit for that land that we love so much, and the experiences that we had there. So anyway, again, Chase, we really appreciate your time tonight. We'll look forward to getting this out here very soon. And until then, we'll certainly be in touch in the meantime. All right.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Chase. We'll give you a cheerio and we'll talk more soon.
Yeah, we'll see you.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.